Turn to Acts chapter 16. Acts chapter 16. Just going to talk about reputation today and what it means to have a reputation. What does it mean for us as Spirit-filled people? Meaning, what are the important things that form our reputation to the world, and just being worthy and things like that. And it's an interesting thing because, as we know, being a Spirit-filled Christian doesn't mean that you have the best reputation in the world. It doesn't mean like, well, you're just the highest level of goodness and therefore you get the most respect and the highest reputation. That's not how it works. So it's a very interesting kind of balance between how we need to think of our reputation and how the world thinks of it. We preach a gospel that's not really palatable to most people. It's not really received with joy by most people. So it's certainly kind of a strange position we find ourselves in. Sometimes, like, we get Spirit-filled, we get saved, and we just want to tell everyone about this good news, and then suddenly we're like treated like dirt sometimes, and it's like, what? That's weird. And yeah, the old, I don't know if it's Pastor Steve's testimony, but I've heard it plenty of times where I wish you'd go back on the drugs, go back on the drink. Like, you were much better, liked you much better before you got Spirit-filled. Was that you? No. Okay. Oh, okay. Heard it a lot though. So anyway, so Acts chapter 16, I'm going to read just a couple of accounts here. Acts chapter 16 and verse 1, and it says, "Then he came to Derbe and Lystra, and behold, a certain disciple was there." So this is Paul here. Came unto this town, and so it says, "Behold, a certain disciple was there named Timothy, the son of a certain Jewish woman who believed, but his father was Greek. He was well spoken of by the brethren who were at Lystra and Iconium, but Paul wanted to have him go on with him, and took and circumcised him because of the Jews that were in those quarters, for they knew all that his father was a Greek. And as they went through the cities, they delivered them the decrees for to keep, that were ordained of the apostles and elders which were at Jerusalem. So the churches were strengthened in the faith and increased in number daily." So we know that Timothy was an important guy, and there's an epistle to him, one of the books of the Bible. And so here we see when he first got sort of plucked out as someone that was important to the work, and we see that he had a good reputation. It says that, so he had a Jewish mother and a Greek father, and says in verse 2, he was well spoken of by the brethren. So, when Paul's picking people to go with him, he obviously, even though he's obviously, the pool to pick from is Spirit-filled people, he still wanted particular characteristics of people to help the work move along. And what did reputation get him? Well, and I think might have read somewhere he's early 30s at this point, but I don't know. Maybe that was when the epistle was written. I don't know. But, we know he was younger. But this poor guy, great reputation. Yeah, you come with me. Oh, but actually, we're going to need to circumcise you. because of why. So if we look at why, you've probably heard that being Jewish comes through the mother, but I looked into it and I couldn't find that was really a biblical thing. I mean, there was some research around, if you look in the forefathers and all that, and Abraham and who they had children with, and then the non-Jewish people they had children with, you could see that it seemed to be that when the mother was Jewish, that's who was blessed and all that. But I don't know that was the actual official rule back then, like you're Jewish if your mother's Jewish. But that definitely came about I think it's in the 1st or 2nd century with the Jewish religion. At some point, it just became a thing that you're Jewish if you come from your mother. And that's kind of how it is today. And so that was Timothy's situation here. So he says he wasn't circumcised because his father was Greek. So presumably he had the choice and he didn't want it done. But, we think about generally how we're supposed to, all the instructions for Paul in the Bible and Jesus about how we're to be to the world and how we're to present ourselves. In this instance is an example of Paul saying, you know what, let's remove the distraction of this guy who's not circumcised but Jewish. We're about to go preach the gospel to all these, Jews. And he could see that situation would become a distraction and a pointless, needless thing that everyone would be looking at when he's trying to preach the gospel. And so, you think about what Paul did here, this balance between having a good reputation and sort of being all things to all men, but not compromising. And so that's why they did that, and it's just an interesting side effect of having a good reputation. Sometimes when it's about the Lord and you're sticking up for the Lord and you're not compromising, you can suffer some kind of loss. You can suffer some persecution, some reputation loss, because you want to be with the Lord. Now, of course, he didn't need to be circumcised according to the New Testament gospel. We know that, and that's where it gets interesting. If you turn to Galatians Chapter 2, so maybe you want to accuse Paul of caving in here and giving in to what maybe he was fearful of what would come if he wasn't circumcised. So he's like, let's just take care of this. But we see here same kind of thing, but on the opposite side. And you'll see in this situation, which was sort of flipped, Paul was very, he drew a line in the sand, said, no, this practice from the Old Testament is not required for salvation. So Galatians Chapter 2, verse 1. Then after 14 years, I went up again to Jerusalem with Barnabas and also took Titus with me. And I went up by revelation and communicated to them that gospel which I preach among the Gentiles, but privately to those who are of reputation, lest by any means I might run or had run in vain. Yet not even Titus, who was with me, being a Greek, was compelled to be circumcised. And this occurred because of false brethren secretly brought in, who came in by stealth to spy out our liberty, which we have in Christ Jesus, that they might bring us into bondage, to whom we did not yield submission even for an hour, that the truth of the gospel might continue with you. And so here we have a situation where the Jews were, had already put the pressure on them about this. And these are, it says they're false brethren. So they're people that were saved in the New Testament sense, but were trying to mix in the Jewish law and things like circumcision and, other things as well. And Paul calls them false brethren. And so you can see here the difference in how he viewed this situation. These are Christians trying to mix in, what does it say there? The old way, the bondage. Whereas Paul said, this is our liberty, that the new way, we're not under law. And when it came to the reputation of the gospel and the truth of the gospel, Paul was very, very clear cut. And he says there in verse 5, to whom we did not yield submission even for an hour. So he says, we didn't even think about it for a minute, compromising the gospel, the truth, and letting in these other practices which are not part of Jesus' gospel. So the lesson here is it's sort of the same group of people that he was trying to, in one sense, not appease, but remove a distraction. And in the other case, it became an issue of doctrine. It became an issue of what is the gospel. And so that's why he came down on that and said, no, this is not something that's part of the gospel. So, we all know, walking on in the Lord, we have to preserve the gospel. And sometimes that means we go the softer way, and sometimes it means we go the harder way, depending on the situation. We have to make sure that there isn't a reason for the world to attack our reputation. And there's been some sayings that I've heard in the last 20 years that have been good. They don't come to mind now, but it's along the lines of, if your reputation isn't shot, you're probably not walking in the spirit, and things like that. But so, sometimes we got to do different things to preserve the gospel. And sometimes we even have to make decisions to say, to not do something, or to do something, as we read here, that really we don't have to. Or maybe it's like a testimony thing where maybe we want to go do something, just, go to some event or whatever, and it wouldn't be a problem for us and it wouldn't harm us. But maybe for our testimony, it might be a little risky. So we don't do something that really we could and wouldn't be a problem, but we don't do it because of the reputation of the gospel, just to be safe. And I think you know what I'm talking about here. There's things that become stumbling blocks to even our brothers and sisters, so we don't want to offend people, and we don't want to cause a situation that doesn't have to happen. Now, other situations do have to happen. When maybe we do something or say something that's scripturally correct and it offends our brother or sister, and that needs to be addressed. So there's this kind of balance, and I wrote down here a list of things that might not be offensive to us, but might be to others, like politics, food, medicine, different lifestyles, like hippies, healthy, being healthy, fashion, style, your idea about how to live life. All these things can, if we're not careful, be stumbling blocks to others, and they don't have to be. And you can still have those things and ways and ideas, and they don't have to be completely secretive or anything, but there's just a way to live in the Lord. So I think to have a healthy assembly, we have to be, they talk about, what is it, in the emotionally intelligent, I think is the term. There's a term anyway, and it just means that internally you're honest with yourself, like you're just a sane person who can treat facts as facts, and be emotionally intelligent and honest, or something like that. I might have the wrong term, but I think we all have to be spiritually honest with each other. And then it says in the word about not taking offense, but also not causing offense. So it's the Lord's got it all covered, because he basically gives instruction to both sides of any issue or argument, which is, don't put the stumbling block out there, but also don't become offended and get that root of bitterness, and don't let that fester. So I think the Lord, probably due to our, human nature, he probably made it that way on purpose, because there's two chances for a situation to be corrected. That's better than if there's just one. If you said the person who's offending you, you've got to get it right. But there's two sides, and each side has a opportunity to resolve a situation. Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 12. Just a few quick scriptures and before we go into another thought. Just summarizing what we just talked about, Romans chapter 12 and verse 18. If it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men. And, as it says there, if it is possible, meaning you've got these choices, you could go and kind of take things to the edge all the time, and legally you'd be in the right, and, maybe even spiritually, but we need to, as much as possible, be people, moderate people that can associate with the world so we can preach the gospel. 1 Peter chapter 2. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 15. So for this is the will of God, that by doing good you may put to silence the ignorance of foolish men. So again, that we know that maybe it's not a popular gospel or whatever, but doesn't mean we don't care about our reputation, because we do. If we're going to preach a gospel that, about repentance and freedom from sin and cleansing and all that, then we have to walk the walk. We have to walk in the Spirit. And so there is a little pressure there to says they're put to the silent, because as we've heard, everyone's looking at us. If you preach the gospel to them, they're looking at you, keeping an eye on you and your testimony, and praise the Lord they do, because that is the testimony. The testimony is the reflection of someone who's walking in the Spirit. And with the general masses and religion, that's where they fall down, because they will be caught out. They will do things that are just hypocritical and wrong. And that's when people just dismiss religion, probably rightly so. But we need to be people who are about showing people this one-on-one relationship that's available, that's in the Bible. Proverbs chapter 22. Proverbs 22. Verse 1. A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, loving favor rather than silver and gold. So, the value of a good reputation here it's talking about. The fact that if you think about what it takes to get a reputation in the world, whatever, like think about how much time it takes and how many different examples there needs to be to people to get their reputation. And a reputation doesn't exist in a vacuum. Like if you're just a great person and you never interact with anyone, do you have a reputation? If a tree falls in the forest, doesn't make a sound. You don't have a reputation unless there's someone observing you. And so the value of that, because you got to build it up over time, is very high, as it says here that, a good name is to be chosen rather than great riches. And then once a reputation once you do one thing wrong, the reputation is kind of destroyed in many instances. It takes years to build one, and then you can just destroy it in an instant. So that's why it's so precious, because it is valuable. It is hard to keep that reputation over a long period of time. And so in Ecclesiastes, don't turn there, but it says a good reputation is more valuable than costly perfume. So, the wise writers knew the value of a reputation even back then. So I don't know if in Chris's job, he deals with a little bit of this stuff, maybe on the business level, but I'm not talking about the personal level today. But, there's a big industry around reputation now today, because yes, if you've got money, you can try and buy a reputation in a sense with all these tools and technology that's out there. And so now there's sort of industries around creating and building a reputation, and then finding out what someone else's reputation is about, which I'm going to show in a second. And obviously, most people who get a job get a background check done. And I've heard even now they take your credit report as well now and judge you based on that. Pretty or maybe now, since they can't find anyone to work, maybe those standards have dropped. But then the third thing is repairing reputations, the whole industry around repairing reputations. And I've had a few instances with that in companies where they haven't done the right thing. So you go and write a review or something, and suddenly you get their attention, and suddenly the money's on the table, and all the options of how to get that bad reputation erased. So I was going to do this live, but it took too long. So I've got it up here. So yeah, you can go. All right, I'll be good from here. So I looked at my reputation. I was going to search it live. I actually remember a few years ago finding somehow online, and I clicked, and it was like, had all these charts and dashboards about you, and that had all these dials everywhere between 1 and 5, and it's just saying like, you're this person, and you stuff that just even got wrong, like you belong to this political party, and you have properties here, and all this kind of stuff. And I couldn't find that again, but I found another one, and it's just funny because these sites out there, they kind of want to intrigue you. And so you can see the first thing here is your score range. Well, that's an interesting score range, isn't it? I need to find out what this person's about. And see if my click works. Yeah, so you click in, and oh my goodness, it's just, I don't know if it's called shady. These are probably real reports and stuff, but the way they show you that they're processing your reputation and checking it is really dodgy. Like, it'll have a grid of things like that they're going to check, and then they'll make them flash, and then just before you click away, like the last one that flashes is the most horrible people in society, and the kinds of people I'm talking about, offenders and things like that, and it just flashes before your eyes, and like, what? I gotta find out what, is there an error in my report and all this kind of stuff. So you may be surprised about what we gather about you. So really trying to get you scared about what's out there. And then I found truthfinder.com, which I'm glad you're all relieved to know is out there, that there is finally a truth out on the internet. And I'm just going to highlight a few words. You don't need to worry about the whole thing, but this is what you see when you go to the website instantly, is like, learning the truth about the history of your family and friends can be shocking. So please take caution when using this tool. And then you click into my name, and you got some yellow here. possible criminal. So they, or traffic records, you know, so they've linked in the bad stuff with the minor stuff. And I certainly haven't lived in half these places, but
if we type in your name into criminal history, it will find out.
Yeah. So, and then it starts making you nervous. Like, have you committed a crime? Like, we just found something. Have you? Like, not saying anything, but just asking with the red exclamation mark. And this took quite a while, because it's the way all these websites work is they just show spinning stuff and like processing stuff, even though behind the scenes, none of that's going on. It's all software that's instant, but it's like churning and red asterisks. And this is these are the reputable sites. And then the next one is, you may be shocked to find out what is in your report. And then criminal or traffic record found. And then the next one, social media results found. So this is all trying to scare you about what your reputation is out there. And then this was a classic, government watch list notice. So at this point you're panicking. You are absolutely panicking. But it just says simply being an associate of a known suspect or posting something on social media raises suspicion. Did you know if your name appears on a list? So this is an absolute nothing burger, but you're just freaking out because you're on a government watch list. And then your background report may contain comments. So now it's worried about you being triggered by what people are saying about you. So it warns you that you may see embarrassing comments about yourself, potentially embarrassing or surprising. And then it's asking you about, do you believe you will find out any bankruptcies or mortgages? And that's where I just pretty much bailed and thought that they're collecting information about me from me. They're not telling me anything. They're just like trying to gather information. I think that was, yeah. So then I thought, what would Jesus' reputation score look like? Because mine wasn't great. And I wish I could have found the site with all the dials. It was all the green and red and orange. And I don't think Jesus' reputation would have been good. Now, I don't know if you can, but think of it. I mean, seriously, he didn't have a good reputation amongst a lot of people. He hung out with questionable people, all the people that society hated. He broke Jewish law. He was accused of that. He didn't really have a steady home, so he's just wandering around. He was found guilty, like in my last talk, we talked about that. Doesn't matter if right or wrong. In fact, those of us who've gone for visas and stuff, there's one question, which is, have you ever been arrested? And it doesn't matter if the cop was completely clueless and got it all wrong, or got your face wrong and he meant to arrest him. Second you're arrested, that's it. Your reputation's toast. So previous arrests, public nuisance, you know, a lot of people following him, causing annoyance from the Pharisees and all that, unlawful gatherings, causing disturbances. People just said he was crazy. That last one, turn to Matthew chapter 12, just to pick one of these aspects of Jesus out. Matthew chapter 12. So, you know, in the early phases of Christianity, after Jesus had ascended, or after he was gone to the Father, they tried to sort of rewrite all the miracles he did and try to figure out how to I can't remember the word, but, you know, make all that a negative, tarnish it. And so they would actually say that he was practicing magic and part of the occult and stuff. This is what the opponents of Jesus in the early centuries made up about him. And it's actually in the Bible even. So in Matthew chapter 12 and verse 24, well, let's say verse 23, after he just healed someone Verse 23, and all the multitudes were amazed and said, could this be the son of David? Now, when the Pharisees heard it, they said, this fellow does not cast out demons except by Beelzebub, the ruler of the demons. So they accused him of being satanic and using magic and all those kinds of things for what he was doing. And ironically, that's what we get today. A lot in the last few years, I've been noticing it a lot is like, to me, the most common kind of fake Christian is someone who says that either miracles happen very rarely today, and by that I mean tongues, healings, all the things that actually do happen. It either happens today a very small amount or it doesn't happen at all. But when it does happen, it's of the devil, you know, that's just all that stuff you're talking about. But they will say that, no, God still does do it sometimes. So you're like, but I'm presenting you all this stuff that's happened and you've just decided, well, that's all of the devil. So which are the healings that you do believe? Which are the miracles that you do believe? And it's just terrible how the power of God is just whitewashed and just thrown away. Turn to Mark chapter 1. Yeah, just the way that mainstream Christianity just decided that, you know, even though the Bible is all about miracles and power, well, about the time the Bible finished being written, that's when it all stopped. You know, there was no need for it anymore. And that's another thing they say. Well, yeah, there was miracles when it was needed in those times, but there's no need for it now. What's different about today? So Mark chapter 1, reading a story about Jesus here and just a little aspect about how he viewed his own reputation. We'll start in Mark chapter 1, verse 41. And it says, now a leper came to him. Sorry, verse 40. Now a leper came to him, imploring him, kneeling down to him and saying to him, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Then Jesus, moved with compassion, stretched out his hand and touched him and said to him, I am willing, be cleansed. As soon as he had spoken, immediately the leprosy left him and he was cleansed. And he strictly warned him and sent him away at once and said to him, see that you say nothing to anyone, but go your way, show yourself to the priest and offer for your cleansing those things which Moses commanded as a testimony to them. However, he went out and began to proclaim it freely and to spread the matter so that Jesus could no longer openly enter the city, but was outside in deserted places, and they came to him from every direction. So there's two aspects of reputation here, quite different angles, but the first is that Jesus had come into contact with a leper, and you know, there's laws about that in the Old Testament about what you had to do and go to the priest. I didn't look them up, but you know, there's procedure. And Jesus said to him, you know, yeah, I've healed you and all that, but you need to, as a leper, you need to go show yourself to the priest. And so again, he didn't want to be someone who was just willfully breaking the law for no reason and just sort of like being an antagonist and just kind of disrupting things just for the sake of it. He told him to go and do the right thing. And he actually didn't. He said the guy just went and was just like, Jesus healed me of leprosy, you know, and he didn't do what Jesus said. The second part related to reputation here is that Jesus didn't really need that healing trumpeted about. He didn't want his reputation to go forth. He wanted the gospel to go forth. So he didn't really want this guy going around saying like, this man, he's a magician, you know, he's amazing, you know, he didn't want it to be all about him, Jesus, the man Jesus. He always was talking about being about his Father's business. So we knew he wanted his Father's will to be done. And so he just didn't want it. Now, there was also a practical side to why he didn't want it, in that when he was in towns and things, and the message got around and there was crowds, it was very difficult to actually carry out his mission and actually have not quiet conversations, but conversations that could be heard and be fruitful. And it was just too crowded. So because this guy went and spread the matter, it says that he had to be outside in deserted places. So they went out to him where they could gather and those kinds of things. But, the main point is that his mission wasn't about getting fame for miracles. His mission was about the gospel and salvation. Philippians Chapter 2. Philippians Chapter 2. And now this passage talks about relating our reputation and what we should think about it to how Jesus thought about it. So verse 5 of Philippians Chapter 2. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, did not consider it robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a bondservant and coming in the likeness of men. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even the death of the cross. Therefore, God also has highly exalted him and given him the name which is above every name. And so going through this, that we're going to remember about in a minute, the death of Jesus, him, even just that action that he died for us, it gave him an even higher name. And he esteemed him. And in the literal kind of meaning of verse 7, but made himself of no reputation, it says, but he did empty himself. So he essentially emptied his reputation. He made himself a shell in that sense as a man, to do all these things for us, to carry forth the word. And so I think it would be really interesting to know, what Jesus was like as a human being, to see how that all worked, like how obviously many people were attracted to him and followed him, but just to see how he handled himself to be this way is just amazing. It'd be really interesting to find out. What if Jesus did care about his reputation as a man? Well, think about all the times he spoke tough sayings to the Pharisees and all that, and to people. He couldn't have done it. He could not have said what he needed to say if he was worried about reputation. And that's the same thing with us. We can't. Sometimes reputation is important, and other times when it comes to no compromise in the gospel, it is not important. And it's just like being a politician. You just can't be a politician and not compromise. It's just part of the job. And if Jesus had tried to be well liked, he would not have been able to bring in this new way and to show the new way, because the new way is completely opposite to how they all thought. And so he had to put aside his reputation to give us that chance at salvation. And last scripture, 1 Peter Chapter 2. 1 Peter Chapter 2. and verse 22. So this is kind of thinking about how did Jesus, when Jesus died, it was sort of his lowest point of realizing who he'd become. Because to take on the sin of the world, it's going to be pretty bad. Hang on a second. I don't know if I got the right verse here. Oh, yeah. So verse 22, who committed no sin, nor was deceit found in his mouth, and who, when he was reviled, did not revile in return. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but committed himself to him who judges righteously. So he suffered this loss of reputation. He suffered ridicule, abuse, physical harm, and all these things. And yet he didn't revile in return. And so, how should we be? If our name gets trodden down or something for the good of the gospel, we don't need to go trying to repair it. The way we repair it, in a sense, is we keep the gospel, we keep defining the gospel. We don't compromise on it. We do the things that we need to be all things to all men, but we don't go beyond that. And the ways that we can do that is because the gospel is so clear, we can unintentionally even soften the gospel, and we can see the people out there, good people, and try not offend them and leave things out of what we say, and we can soften things, and that's not what we should do. We don't want to try and fit in to where it damages the gospel. Sometimes one thing we run into with reputation is the Pentecostal charismatic image out there. That's tough because we go out there, we preach the gospel, and instantly, if people know about that, then you have a reputation that doesn't belong. And so that can be kind of difficult, when you're talking to people and you just instantly, what they're thinking you are, and you're like, no, we're not. And you're associated with these things. So how do you handle that? And, the sleaziness of some of these well-known scenes. And I think you can turn it into a positive and sort of maybe surprise people and say, well, actually, no, we think that's abhorrent, or, whatever it is, the money in religion, or the misuse of tongues, for example, and all the terrible things that go on. You can use that as a tool to make people stand up and go, wow, okay, I thought I had you pegged, and maybe not. Maybe there's something different here. And so we can address these things head on and explain to people, like, we don't fit into the template, because that's really what the world's about, is just stereotypes and templates and trying to put everyone in their box. And strangely enough, when you actually follow the Bible, you become a minority and not part of any template, which is totally bizarre. So I just wanted to finish on a thought with a question, really. Is it brave for us to risk our reputation? So are we doing something brave following the Lord? And if you said that we were risking anything, it'd probably be just a comfortable life where you get along with everyone. But if you think about, is it brave to follow Jesus and risk your reputation? Well, to me, bravery implies there's a choice to maybe go above and beyond and do something, or there's a chance to just continue on as you were. That's not really what the situation we're in. This is life and death. So we can't really think, like, go out in the world and just think, gee, how brave are we, and what a great reputation we have to God, because he's done it all for us. And it's a choice of, are we going to go with life or not? So to me, I think the answer to that question is no. There's no, I don't think we can associate bravery with ourselves. I think we can associate, this is the one way, the way, the truth, the life. And the sort of that pull to follow God is a very strong thing, which doesn't necessitate like our willpower or anything like that. So I'll just leave it there.